Joining me right now is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. What do you think about this TikTok Oracle situation? Will the government sign off on this deal? And I guess my question really is how many Chinese nationals will start working for Oracle? And should we be worried about the communist government trying to get them to send data to the CCP?
Thanks for having me on, Maria. Well, we should always be worried about the Chinese Communist Party trying to infiltrate our companies and put at risk the privacy and the security of American citizens. I think when dealing with the party, the right approach is Ronald Reagan's old maxim about the Communist Party in the Soviet Union, which is trust but verify. So I am pleased that this is going to be undergoing a national security review by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. I will be skeptical until I can see all the details about what ByteDance has proposed, that they are truly going to surrender all control and access to the data of Americans. Again, the whole point of this exercise was not to prevent Americans from using a very popular video sharing app. It was to protect American citizens from having their personal data vacuumed up and sent back to mainland China to be used against them now or in the future. That's the main objective this review needs to be looking for.
So, Senator, you introduced legislation yesterday to revoke China's permanent most favored nation status, which ensures equal trading opportunity for World Trade Organization member countries. Tell us about your bill, and when you look back over the years since when Clinton first allowed and opened up the waters for China to get that most favored nation status, has it worked?
No, Maria, it hasn't worked at all. This week is the 20-year anniversary of granting China permanent most favored nation status, something that Joe Biden voted for and that he still defends to this day, even though making that most favored nation status permanent and automatic, putting it on autopilot every year, led to the so-called China shock when we sent millions and millions of our manufacturing jobs to China. What happened before 2000 is that the president and the Congress would review China's progress towards being a market-based economy and protecting human rights. There were some pretty fierce debates in the 1990s on an annual basis about Chinese backsliding, especially after Tiananmen Square. We need to go back to that approach so we can keep the pressure on China every year to stop stealing our intellectual property, to stop stealing all the products that they have been manufacturing based on American design and engineering. We need to put pressure on them to respect the rights of their own citizens, to uphold their international commitments. We ought not be in a situation where China gets most favored nation status at a time when they are not upholding their trade obligation. They're shooting missiles at our ships in the South China Sea. So it wouldn't revoke it, but it would be a great point of leverage every year to make sure the Chinese Communist Party is beginning to behave like a responsible actor.
I mean, Senator, is there anything else you can do? You know, we've been talking about this intellectual property theft for a long time now. The president tried to get them to put that in the phase one deal. They said, no, we can't do that. We won't even admit that we're stealing intellectual property. Clearly, this last 20 years has not worked because we kept expecting that the Chinese Communist Party would say, well, democracy works, freedom and independence works, let's move in that direction. They haven't at all. In fact, they've just elevated Xi Jinping to Mao status, which is dictator for life.
Yeah, they've been backsliding very rapidly under Xi Jinping, Maria. That's why we should be reviewing their most favored nation status every year, because they would then face the consequences of losing most favored nation status, which would mean a significant increase in tariffs, which is exactly the leverage the president used to get the phase one deal, and it would get the attention of the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. It would also get the attention of America's corporate leaders, because one reason they wanted permanent most favored nation status is that they didn't want the inconvenient facts of something like Tiananmen Square to prevent them from permanently outsourcing jobs to China. If they know that every year Congress and the president is going to review Chinese Communist Party behavior, they might think twice about doing that.
That's a very good idea. I think you're right. The corporate sector needs to get the memo in terms of focusing on national security risks as opposed to just trying to sell widgets to a billion people. I got two issues that I'd love you to address. You mentioned Biden. You know, there's new evidence that Hunter Biden has all these deals, and he got $1.5 billion from the Chinese Communist government after he took a trip on Air Force Two with Joe Biden when he was vice president. And then there's this Chinese virologist released a report yesterday that she says backs up her claim that COVID-19 is human-made, that it was made in a lab in Wuhan, China. Senator, you were the first to raise your hand and say, wait a minute, this wet market doesn't make any sense. This likely came from the Wuhan lab. She's saying it was man-made. That would indicate that this was intentional.
Yeah, so on the first point, Maria, I think it's important for the American people to know as we go into this election 7 weeks from today that in 47 years of dealing with China, Joe Biden's only created one job for his own son, while he's cost millions of manufacturing jobs from voters across the country. They should have that in mind because that's what a Joe Biden presidency would do as well. It would continue to send jobs overseas to China. As for the claims that the virus was manufactured in a laboratory in Wuhan, my point has not been that it was manufactured necessarily, but that it most likely originated in that laboratory. Now, it could have been a naturally occurring virus that was being studied and that accidentally escaped from the lab through lax safety procedures. The more fundamental point, though, is that we still don't know the origins because the Chinese Communist Party won't allow international team of scientists to go to Wuhan. They won't come clean about what was happening in that laboratory. All the evidence, it's circumstantial, but all the evidence points towards that laboratory. Literally no evidence points toward that seafood market. That is simply a cover story for the party to try to misdirect from the likely origins of this virus.
Well, this woman's story is incredible, that she says it was man-made in that lab. We'll keep watching that and look for more information about it. Senator, before you go, President Trump's list of potential Supreme Court nominees, you were one of 20 of them. Amazing. Congratulations to get on that list. Is this something you'd like to do, become a Supreme Court justice, Senator?
Well, thanks, Maria, for that. That's pretty far down the road. I'm running for re-election as the president. There's no vacancies currently, but I think more importantly, the list of very distinguished conservative jurists shows that the president is committed in a second term to continuing to put good, solid conservative judges on the federal courts. And it's a real honor to be among such distinguished jurists on that list. And I know the president is fully committed to making sure that we continue to have judges on our courts who understand their role is not to make the law, but to apply the law.
And meanwhile, you've got your job today trying to help the American people. Let me get your take on this report that we're getting, that at 11 a.m. Eastern this morning, a 50-member group of House Dems and Republicans will release a $1.52 trillion stimulus plan to break this stalemate on the coronavirus relief. Is that happening this morning? And what will it contain, Senator?
Well, from the reports I've seen, Maria, it's going to contain a lot of the things that we agreed upon last week that should be in a bill, like extending loans to small businesses that are in the most trouble because they're in hard-hit industries like restaurants, travel, tourism, or so forth, helping our schools reopen or stay open safely, providing more money for vaccines. I've also seen reports, though, that there could be a no-strings-attached bailout of hundreds of billions of dollars for states and cities, not related to coronavirus, but to their long-standing fiscal mismanagement. I think that's a non-starter for most Americans. Those states and those cities really need to get their own house in order. They shouldn't be coming with an open hand to Congress, using this pandemic as pretext for a bailout. So we'll see what the House bill proposes, but I think hundreds of billions of dollars of a no-strings-attached bailout for cities and states that have had long-standing fiscal problems is going to be a non-starter for most Americans.
Absolutely. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it. We will see you soon. Senator Tom Cotton. We'll be right back.